Okay, recording in progress. Hold on, I'm doing this cool thing. Um, cool. Awesome. Awesome. So there will be an AI meeting summary
Which is quite smart, apparently.
thing. It's actually really good.
Yes,
I
yes.
and it was only because of Stacy was playing around with the thing that I ever found out about it. So thank you, Stacy. All right. So today we are talking about other people. So far in our confidence program, we have been focusing solely on you guys, right? And what can you do and how do you run your brain to make sure that you're doing the things that you need to do? And so far, we have pretty much eliminated what other people are doing around you. And this is really the point that we're going to start talking about other people. And there's a couple of things that different ways that I kind of want to do this. And this is the first thing that we're going to start out with, which is called frames. And I want everybody to be on the same page as what the lingo is that we're using and what I mean. And so that we're going to start at the very beginning with the super basics. So what is a frame? So this is one of the most important, I think, and interesting texts or quotes that I've ever had. There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Okay. So when we think about all of the information that we have and all of the experiences and things that happen in our world, in one way we can look at it, it's just information. It's literally just data. The way somebody looks at us and the expression on their face is information. It's data. The way somebody uses their tone of voice to express information to us, it's data. The words that they choose to use to express things to us, it's data. And we do not have any reaction to data normally. So 3 plus 3 equals 6. This is data that we have no reaction to whatsoever. But when we put a facial expression together with a tone of voice, together with a particular set of words, we get pissed off. Okay? Even though that's still just data. And it's important that we understand that we are the ones who put data into context. And when we put it into context, we are giving it a meaning. And by our words and what we say is we put a frame around it. Okay? So that's what I mean by a frame. The frame is the context and the meaning that we're giving information. Okay? Now, some of you may have heard this story before. All right? So bear with me if you've heard the story already. So there's a story of this farmer, and he has a son, and the son is helping him in his farm, and the neighbor, also a farmer, walks by, and he says, "Oh, it's so great that you have a son helping you in your farm." And the farmer says, is it great? Not great? Don't know. And the neighbor looks at him and is like, what are you talking about? And then a couple of days later, the boy, the boy at the farmer's place, he goes out and he disappears for several days. And the neighbor comes by and realizes the boy's been gone for several days. And he says, oh, that son of yours, not a great thing to have around the farm. And the farmer says, is it great? Is it not great? I'm not sure. So the boy comes back and he's been in the woods and he finds all of these wild horses. And he brings the wild horses back into the farm and puts them into a corral in the farm, and the farmer neighbor walks by again, and the neighbor says, "Oh my goodness, look at all these wild horses. You've really hit it big. This is such a great thing." And the farmer says, "Is it great or not great? I'm not sure." Now, at this point in time, the neighbor's like, this guy, he doesn't really get it. He doesn't understand that these things are really good or these things are really bad. So the next day, the farmer's son is trying to tame one of the horses, the wild horses, and break the horse in. And he falls off the horse and he breaks his leg. And the neighbor walks by and sees the son there with his broken leg, and he says, "Oh my goodness, this is so awful for you. It's a terrible thing." And the farmer says, "Is it terrible or not? I'm not sure." And the neighbor is like, there's no way that this could be a really great thing. Until the next day, when the army came in and recruited all of the young lads in the town to be able to go off to the war, except for the one with the broken leg. Okay? So this is a great story about understanding framing. It is either good or bad, but our thinking, our context of how we think about it, that is what creates the meaning. So the neighbor, he could assign those judgments of whether it was good or bad all the time, where the farmer wouldn't assign them. He didn't know yet whether it was good or bad. It was just neutral for him. All right? So we always have frames. Okay? We are constantly in a situation where we're framing. If you ever listen to the news, you are constantly listening to frames because the newscasters are constantly putting things into on. Also on the world news tonight, we have another one ongoing precedent of war over in this area, and they will frame things as being terrible or awful or whatever it is, constant conflict or what have you. They will frame it that way because, well, they're newscasters. So you frame things when you ask questions. You frame things based on how you're feeling. You frame things when you have a reaction to something. You frame things based on how you handle situations. So I want you to listen to a couple of things, okay? So if I say, in view of the widespread concern about safety, how are we going to solve this problem? So what have I framed there? Jolynn, what have I framed up for you? In view of the widespread concern about safety, how are you going to solve this problem?
The way you frame make it sound like it's a very serious problem.
Right. So I have put a context in my frame that it's a widespread issue, that there's concern, and that concern and that widespread concern is about safety, right? I've put all of those things in to the context of the question, how do you solve this problem? Okay. Now, how about if I said it this way instead? Many people are concerned. What are you going to do? So, Stacy, what's in the frame of that one? Many people are concerned. What are you going to do?
Like it's a very important, like you're being like watched.
Yep. So you have a context of that as being watched. What else might? So many people are concerned. What are you going to do? What am I framing in there? What meaning am I putting in?
Like your decision will your decision is very important.
And it might affect a lot of people.
Mm.
Yep. Now, listen also to the fact that I've told you that many people are involved in this, but I haven't told you who they are. I've just said many people, right? And now I've also told you that those people are concerned, but I haven't told you what they're concerned about. Right? So that's all part, very vague information, part of my frame. And then I've said that it's going to be you who does something about it. What are you going to do? So not only am I telling you that it's your decision to do something, but it's also your responsibility to take action on it. Does everybody understand that all of that information has been framed in this? Though I haven't said it directly to you, that's what I have said to you. Does everybody get that? Cool. All right. What about this one? What you want, would you want to compromise safety by buying a cheaper model? So Stacy, what am I framing there for you? What would you compromise safety by buying a cheaper model?
Like the cheap model is not safe.
Mm-hmm. So I basically told you that, but if you want to save money, what you're going to sacrifice is safety. Right? I haven't told you how that's going to happen. I haven't told you if that's legitimate, like there's actual research and testing done and things like that. I've just told you that if you bought this cheaper model, then you've compromised safety. Now, I could be even a worse salesman and say, would you want to compromise the safety of your children by buying a cheaper model?
Mm-hmm.
Right now I've really gotten into it, right? So that's how a salesperson can frame something and have you think that you're being a bad parent and you're not considering your child's safety because of the fact that you want to save money. Okay. Now, what happens if somebody says something like, you have a problem? What's the frame there?
Mm. Like you're not solving your problem.
Yeah. So it's you. It's either you personally, like you're somehow defective in some sort of way, right? Or that you've created some sort of problem, or that you have a problem that needs to be solved by you. Versus, how about if I frame it in a different way and say, we have a problem? Jolynn, how is those two things different for you?
I think the earlier version is a lot like pointing fingers, whereas the second portion is more on is like a collective. We
Yep.
can have a collective effort to solve it.
Yep. And so this is the thing is if somebody comes to me and starts saying something like, well, here's the problem that you have in your team, or this is a problem that for you guys to solve, right? The direction of that is going to be in one focus, whereas all I have to do is to change the frame of that, is say, yes, we have a problem, right? So I just change one word from you to we, or you, my team, or your team, to all of us. So all of these kinds of things, I can easily change the frame, especially when I don't agree that the frame should be given to me or to a specific group, right? I can change that and make it more general, or I can make it more specific. Okay, cool. All right. Now, when we talk about different types of frames, I want to give you some idea of frames that are issues and that will come up when people frame things in a particular type of way, okay? So one particular type of way is called the me frame. The me frame, me frame, okay? And the me frame is when somebody approaches situations or events or things like that, and their only concern is how that situation or event affects them, right? They don't care about how that situation or event affects anybody else but themselves. Versus the opposite of that frame is what we call this, an ecology frame, where we're thinking about a wider system. We're thinking about the whole instead. All right. And now this is actually really important because this me frame is one of the things that I see on social media quite a bit, is people who sit and think about a situation, but only think about it from their world, their little box of reality. And they don't think about how is this going to affect other people in the world. Okay. So lots of people will talk about making choices in life, and they say, are you thinking about the whole? For example, some people who are I don't know if anybody's ever heard of people who eat the carnivore diet, right? And so one of the things about carnivore diet is people talk about, no, everybody, carnivore diet's really good, and we should be eating a lot of meat. And then the other people will say, where's the ecology? Because if lots of people eat a lot of meat, that means a lot of animals have to be grazing, a lot of animals have to be eating things. And then what happens to all of our forests, and what happens to greenhouse gases, and what happens? So that's what we call ecology frame. Okay. So me frame, I want to eat this, versus ecology frame, this might be good for the entire planet, for example. All right. Let's look at a different one. All right. So one of the frames that I have also heard a lot of in more recent times is what we would call the blame frame, right? So this is what it sounds like when you guys are in your organizations and everybody's pointing fingers, like who is responsible for the screw up? That's the blame frame. And this is what it kind of sounds like. So when I'm going to a restaurant in Singapore and we're sitting around a circular table, and we just arrived, and the waiter's coming around to pour water into all of the glasses at the table, and all of a sudden somebody walks by them, another staff member, and he hits the elbow of the guy who's pouring the water, and the water spills all over the table. And then when that guy realizes what's happened, he goes and puts the jug down, and he goes and scolds the guy that hit his elbow, right? This is what I call blame frame. Now, the opposite of that is what we call an outcome frame. And an outcome frame is what is it that we need to do to solve the problem? So the problem is that the tables were too close together, and that the staff couldn't freely get next to each other when they were around the table. The second outcome was there's water all over the table and all over the people at the table. And so we need to clean that stuff up, right? Instead of doing those things, what the gentleman decided to do, what the waiter decided to do, was go and blame somebody for the problem. And that is a very common thing. Okay. Has anybody experienced this before when you've had a situation where at work? Stacy, I'm sure you've had this. Where somebody's going to blame somebody.
Yeah, I mean, like at my previous workplace, there's a lot
Right.
of that. Yeah, my director will be like, how to say like he he will be like, let me think.
Well, one of the examples that you gave earlier was when you did a presentation, right? Then they would tell you and blame you for all of the things that you didn't put in the presentation, right? Instead of say, hey, Stacy, these are the things in the presentation and set you up for success. These are the things in the presentation we need before you
Yeah,
actually did it, right? So that's an outcome frame. And blame frame is wait until Stacy does her presentation and then just tell her how terrible it is. That's a
yeah,
blame frame.
it's like yeah, I did that presentation, and then my boss cleared it, and then when he went to the director, he's like, wait, before you talk, why your presentation is like that? Yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
And that's exactly it. So it's that blaming aspect of it rather than what do we need instead? What is the outcome that we're trying to get to? And it's really important that we think about those kinds of things. Now, another one and common thing that happens is the sameness frame. So the sameness frame is the idea that all things are the same. Like this is always going to be like this and it's never going to change. Okay? So this happens a lot in organizations where people who have worked in an organization for a really long period of time, they're very resistant to doing anything different. And I've worked with a lot of people in different fields. So one field was an architectural company, and the person who was leading the architectural company, she had a huge problem with getting paid for doing her work. So she would do designs and she would do all of these things, and then she would send a bill out for the work that had already been done and then have to fight the client for getting paid. And I said, why don't you send a bill in advance of doing the work? Oh, no, we can never do that in our industry. That's the sameness frame. That'll never work in our industry. We can never do that in our industry, right? Whereas there are people who actually do it. Her mindset is, I have to be the same as the majority of the people, even though that meant she didn't get paid. All right. Now, this one is the opposite contrast frame. What's different? So if you look at all the coins, right, we can look at the coins and we can say, well, they're all from Singapore and they're all metal and they're all round. And we can say all of these things about sameness. Or we can go to the contrast frame and we can say they're all different numbers. They have different pictures on them. There's different representations of them. There's a same lion, but there's a different lion. And so all of these things that we can do about sameness and differences. What we do want to look at is what is the difference that makes the difference, right? What is it that we can do in our organization and frame things in a way that says, how could we do this differently that might end up with a different result? That's an important one to do as well. All right, last one, and this is a really important one for this one, is when people have a frame that's called, and this is a problem frame, this is a frame that's called the helpless frame. And the helpless frame is, I can't do this. I have a problem with this. I don't know how. So they are in this situation where they're in a constant state of, I am incapable. And there's a story of this with one of the people I used to know who lived in Singapore. And her name was Carol. And she was not necessarily very technically advanced. So she wanted to start her own website. And so I was going to guide her and walk her through all the things that she needed to do with her website on the computer. And her response to me was, oh, I'm going to wait until Daniel, her husband, gets home. I'm going to wait until Daniel gets home and he can do it for me. And I'm like, no, Carol, I'll just walk you through it. And she's like, no, I just can't. I'm not good with these things. I'll let Daniel do it when he gets home. I said, Carol, I'll even make an appointment to come over and I'll do it with you in person. Oh, no, I just never been good at these things. And it just won't ever work. Right? So for her, she was constantly in this, I am not capable to do it scenario. And that is what we call the helpless frame. Okay. Now, there is an incredible story that goes along with this particular frame and the opposite frame. So in the 1960s, there was a particular teacher in the United States who was trying to teach her children about racism. And so this was a big eruption in the United States about blacks versus whites. And she wanted to teach her students about racism. So what she did was she walked into class and she said, I've just read this report and I have this understanding that blue-eyed children are smarter than brown-eyed children naturally. So I would like all the blue-eyed children to sit in the front of the class and all the brown-eyed children to sit in the back of the class. And for 2 weeks, she just watched the interaction between blue-eyed children and brown-eyed children and how they treated each other. So the blue-eyed children started teasing the brown-eyed children that they were not smart. The blue-eyed children would do so even on the playgrounds and tell the brown-eyed children they were not smart. The brown-eyed children all started hanging around with each other. But the one thing that she didn't anticipate was the blue-eyed children's grades all started going up in that 2 weeks. Even if they were poor students before, their grades started going up. Now, after those 2 weeks were over, she came in and she says, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I read the study incorrectly. It's actually the brown-eyed children that are smarter than the blue-eyed children switch places. So the blue-eyed children had to go into the back of the room and the brown-eyed children came to the front of the room. Now, as you can imagine, it's now the brown-eyed children's revenge against the blue-eyed children, because they were the ones who were put down and teased before. And now guess what? They were really going to get their one-up mitts sort of back. So they even teased the blue-eyed children even more than they were. And fights broke out during recess and when they were on their breaks. And strangely enough, all of the blue-eyed children's grades started going down and all the brown-eyed children's grades started going up. Now, at the end of this particular experiment, the teacher had told the children that she wanted them to experience what racism really feels like, and that this was an experiment, and neither of the two situations, the blue-eyed children or the brown-eyed children being smarter than each other, were actually true. And from that point in time, the children all apologized and went on. And those children decided that they would never going to be racist because they understood how it felt. But what was interesting was this other opposite of the helpless frame, which is called the as if frame. And the as if frame is when we sit there and we say, we want you to act as if something were true. So for example, Stacy, we want you to act as if it's true that people are going to like you in your new job. Right? That's what we want you to do. Because if we act as if that is true, just like the children at the school, if we act as if we are smart, if we act as if everyone's going to like us, then that will be true. That is the as if frame. Now, this principle has been studied since the 1800s, and it goes back a very long time. And you can look it up. There's a book called The As If Principle. It's by Richard Wiseman. And it's a very, very important concept in psychology. So, Stacy, for you, what is it that you can do from a as if frame that you can apply for your new job?
I'm going to act as if I will definitely pass probation.
Yes, there you go. I
Yeah.
will act as if I'm going to pass probation. Perfect. Great job. And Jolynn, what about you? What can you do from an as if perspective as it relates to potentially your qigong or your skating or even your investment?
I'll act as if that is happening.
As
Like-
if what is happening?
So, for example, the trading one will be, that means it's already happening and it's going to continue to happen. That 8 p.m. onward, I'll be watching the market.
Yep. Yep.
Mm.
Yep. And so if we're acting as if, this is one of the reasons why, remember a couple of months ago, and Rainey and I said, all we want you to do is sit in front of your your computer screen and do that thing for 5 to 10 minutes maximum, right? Because we wanted you to act as if you're going to do it. Just sitting there and being in that space and getting prepared to do it is that acting as if. Right? Cool. Awesome. All right. Another concept that I want to teach you both about is what we call pre-framing. So pre-framing is when I'm going to mentally think about what kind of meaning am I going to give people in advance. All right. So a pre-framing is, for example, if I'm going to choose what I want to say when I don't want people to argue with me about something. So for example, Rainey and I have both studied this thing called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And one of the things that people say about neuro-linguistic programming is that it's really manipulative. And I don't want people saying that in my class. When I'm training them and teaching them about NLP, I don't want them saying anything about being manipulative. So at the very beginning of my training, on the very first day, in fact, within the first 2 hours, I show a video of this guy who changes somebody's ability to see the color red and yellow. So they can no longer see yellow or red in the same way that they saw them before. And they did so by using a technique of NLP. Okay? And so afterwards, I say, NLP is really powerful, my frame, as you can see from this video, it's super powerful, but you have to use it ethically. Right? So this is what I'm telling them is, yes, you can manipulate people, right? But what I'm saying is I don't want them arguing with me anymore about NLP being manipulative or that it doesn't work. What I'm showing them is it works, it's super powerful, and you need to use it responsibly, ethically. Okay? So that's what I'm doing. Choose what question you want to avoid. So you answer questions you don't want anybody ever asking you. Okay? Well, if you're in a presentation, this is really important to remember. So, Stacy, think about a question that you don't want people asking you at work.
I don't want them to ask like whether I have any other, side hustle.
Yep, cool. Okay. And so what could we say to people that would eliminate them from ever saying anything about that? What pre-frame could we?
Um, like, oh, I'm very busy. Like, I need to take care of my child, and then after that, after taking care of my child, I need to go to work. I barely have time for anything else.
I have no time for any, but between this job, my kids, I have no time for anybody else. Done, right? There's our frame. Perfect, right? Super simple. All right. We want to pre-frame when we want the person choosing the meaning that we're assigning rather than them choosing whatever meaning it is that they want to have. Okay. And this is some of the times when I do this kind of thing is when I'm trying to explain to somebody something that I don't want them to be upset or offended by what it is. So I'm going to, for example, say, hey, Kathy, I'm really concerned. I feel very concerned about your health. I've noticed that you've gained 15 kg in the last 2 months. Is everything okay? Right? So I've pre-framed it by I'm concerned and it's all about your health. Not, wow, you look like a big fat cow. Right? If I said, wow, it looks like you've gained 15 kg, the meaning of that is now open for interpretation. Right? I could be talking about it from a purely physical perspective, like you look like shit, whatever it is. But when I frame it and I say, I'm really concerned about your weight, is there something happening, right? Oh, yeah, I had to take some steroids for a surgery that I had. Oh, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense, right? So then that person, there's no offense. The person's not upset with me, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, wow, like I didn't realize that surgery was so bad for you, right? So we have this great conversation and nobody's upset. That's how pre-framing can help you. So when we'll talk about this on complex equivalent or cause and effect later, okay? So the thing I want to teach you when dealing with other people is this thing that we call reframing. Because oftentimes what happens is people are giving us their stuff, which is all negative, and we don't like it very much. So they think things about us that are negative. They say things to us about something that's negative, and we don't really want that to be a part of our world. Okay. So when I am doing this in a group setting, reframing is a really useful thing to help people to understand their world differently. Let me give you an example. So I was running what's called a motivational book club in Singapore. And that meant that we only read books that were like motivation books that like got us doing something or taking action. And we were having our meeting, and this lady had come to the meeting and she was really upset. And so we asked her what she was upset about. And she said that she saw a friend of hers at the American Club in Singapore, and that her friend was obviously mad at her for something, and she doesn't know why. And we said, what do you mean she's obviously mad at you? Well, I saw her at the club and I waved and I said hi, and she didn't even respond to me. And so then we played a game. Okay. Everybody in the motivational book group played this game. So in this game, it was, what else is possible? What else is possible? Okay. So let me ask, Jolyn, if you were in a situation where you were someplace and somebody had waved or said hi to you and you didn't notice them or see them or whatever, what might have been going on in your world that created that situation?
Probably I'm sleepy.
Yep.
then or I
I'm
could be
sleeping.
deep in thought, thinking
Or
about something.
yep, those are two, right? Two, all of a sudden. Rainy, go ahead.
When I didn't wear my spectacle and I didn't put on my lenses.
Yep. No contacts, no glasses. Yep. What else?
That's so often.
Yep. Stacy, what do you
What else?
think?
It's like when I'm not even focusing.
Right, not focused, right? Right. And so we started this game about what else is possible. So I said, was she leaving the American Club? And she said, yeah. And I said, she might actually have been looking at the taxi stand outside to see if there were any taxis available outside the American Club. So that she might have been going and just focusing on getting to that taxi, or she might have called like an Uber or something and that car was waiting for her and she might have only been paying attention to that. And so as we created all of these other scenarios, other than her being mad, then the girl started realizing that she might have made a mistake. So later on that day, after our event was over, she called her friend and said, hey, I saw you at the American Club the other day. She said, oh, when was that? I don't remember seeing you. And sure enough, what had happened was the girl, the other lady had so much going on in her world that she was up in her head and wasn't paying attention to anybody around her. Never saw her friend whatsoever in American Club. And sure enough, they had coffee, everything was fine. But the thing about it is that lady that was part of my motivational book club had gone on for 4 days thinking that her friend was mad at her for no reason whatsoever and having all of this anxiety and terrible feelings about it. Okay. So this is why I'm teaching you guys these things, because it's a really bad thing to think about. All right. Now, when we're in situations, there are times we get situations where we think about what to say, sort of hours or maybe days after an event has happened. Now, I told you guys in one of our previous classes that I was hired by a CEO to be able to help him to reframe things with his older brother, because his older brother would sit there and make fun of him and he never knew what to say. And it was either me or the boxing guy, right? He was just going to hit him. And so that's a really good scenario where you can use these kinds of things, where somebody is saying something to you and you want to be able to have a clever feedback of it. Or in a situation where what you want to say, you think is too rude to say. And so that's another kind of situation. Or the other person's being like super aggressive. And this is a really good way for you to stay calm with somebody who's being super aggressive. Okay. Now, reframing is an entire way of changing the meaning, either through a context or content reframe. Okay, so let me kind of give you an example of this. Okay, so here is a fish, right? And when we look at the fish, it's just a fish. And when we change the frame, all of a sudden the meaning changes, and we have changed the context of what that little fish is doing. All of a sudden, the little fish was just swimming along, and now it looks like it's going to get eaten by a bigger fish. But when we change the context a little bit more, now we understand that all of the fish that are smaller are about to get eaten by the much bigger fish. Okay? So that is what we're talking about when we reframe things. We just kind of change the meaning. Now, we can change the meaning to be positive, to be neutral, or to be worse. Now, the thing about most people is they're really good at making things worse. Thinking about a scenario or a context and making it worse. Rainey, have you ever had a client of yours who is in a situation where they have reframed something to be bad or worse than it actually was?
Yeah, and this is we often see this in the people who have especially type 6, those who struggle with anxiety and self-doubts, they are very good at coming up with the worst meaning. And it's like quite automatic for them because they have been doing it so often. So it's like a skill, very strong skill for them. So usually what I do with them is that I reminded them that you have the skill set, you know, to do it this way, to think about this, how it can be worse. Then now, using the same skill set that you have, you can actually choose to look at what's the best that is going to happen.
Yep.
So still using the same skill set.
Yep.
I think I'm very at the framing thing to be a lot worse than it is.
Correct. Correct. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to teach you ways of being able to do this in a way that is very different, right? And this is the game that I play with my clients. And I will literally do this on a whiteboard when I do it. And I'm going to give you 2 different scenarios of things that I've done with clients. So I had a client, an executive, who came into me and he said, his boss was being really hard on him. Okay. He's been in a new job for a year and the boss was being really hard on him. And he's like, you know, I don't think this guy likes me. He's going to fire me. And I'm like, yep, that's one possibility. Right. So we've got a negative frame. Here's what the boss is doing. The boss has a particular type of behavior. He's asking difficult questions. And that equates to him as, if he asks difficult questions, that means, complex equivalent, that means that he's going to fire me. He doesn't like me. Okay. So yes, that's a negative reframe. So I said, what else is possible? Okay. So one possibility is that he's upset at you. What else is possible? So Jolynn, what could be possible if a boss is asking somebody in his team or her team, asking difficult questions to that person? What might it mean other than the boss doesn't like the person?
It could just simply means that the colleague didn't consider certain angle or certain situation.
Yeah. And so what the boss is trying to do is trying to, what might the boss's intent of asking those difficult questions then be?
That means probably he spotted a gap or some gaps and trying to sort of direct the person to, you have to also consider that area, or have you considered the areas?
Yeah, Rainy.
Yeah, it could also be a different style of working, different style of leadership, managing people, different style of personality. So that usually causes a clash as well. So to top up on your story about your client, one of my clients also did the same thing. And then he thinks that his boss doesn't like him as well. Quite a senior guy. So then we get to the bottom of it, and then we put on the curiosity frame to understand why does the boss behave that way, and etc. Right? So learning about being curious about the boss, being curious about himself. You know, what's causing him to have this idea that, you know, his boss doesn't like him. So all those stuff that we did slowly help him to realize that, okay, maybe this is not really something personal. You know, maybe it's just him, because he's dealing with a boss that is very aggressive. You know, will be pointing at you. You know, why? Very, it's very strong. So to him, that is something that he will never do. Right. So it's very, very huge gap. So eventually, after he learned to, you know, change his mindset about this boss approach and not take it personally, and also change his approach to get to know the boss better, he actually eventually get promoted.
There you go.
He went from my boss doesn't like me to my boss is not so bad, and then he get promoted.
Yep. There you go. Whoop, sorry. So yes, so the that is a perfect scenario of the fact of what we believe is happening is not necessarily what's really happening. So it can be a leadership style, absolutely. As Jolynn said, it can be that the boss has noticed some gaps, and the boss is trying to ask the questions, the hard questions, to get you to notice also the gaps. And so for me, if a boss is doing that, and that's helping me to learn.
Yeah.
Right? So that could be a positive thing. But as Jolynn presented it, it's just neutral. There's a gap. It's just data. It's just information. Right? What other things could be possible? The boss is asking difficult questions. What might also be another scenario, Stacy, that what would cause a boss to ask difficult questions?
The boss want you to the boss actually likes you and is trying to like prepare you for, I mean, like if the presentation is going to a somebody more difficult, the boss is actually trying to prepare you.
Exactly. So this is the kinds of things that I was going over with my client. I'm like, is there a possibility that he's asking you difficult questions because you might have to take over his position someday, and so therefore you need to think in this way, in these kinds of ways. You need to think through these tough scenarios, and he's trying to actually train you to do that.
Then how do you know if, I mean, like what if somebody is intentionally being difficult and like we are too positive about it?
Right. This is the greatest thing. Okay. But here's the greatest thing. Okay. I want you to think about how that scenario goes, right? I'm trying to be an ass. I'm trying to be really bad. And what happens is every time I'm trying to be really mean to you, you like, oh my God, this is great. This is a great training opportunity. I feel awesome about this. So the bully, I'm going to stop targeting you because you're no fun to play with. You don't get upset. You don't fight back with me. You don't do all of these things that I would normally expect. You don't get upset. You don't cry. So as the bully, I'm not having any fun anymore. This is an important piece of information. If we reframe things to be neutral or positive, bullies will not play with us because of the fact that we don't represent the normal reaction.
It's just like they are trying to press your button, press, but hey, how come nothing works? And they will stop pressing your button. They'll find somebody else to press.
Exactly. And here's story number 2. I had a client who came to me who was basically never ever going to see her own mother ever again. Her mother was such a what we call a negative reframer, i.e., anything positive in anybody's life, she was going to reframe to be negative, right? So she was really, really bad at she was like what we would in the United States call a party pooper. Like any possible good thing that happened to you, she was going to kind of reframe it to be a terrible thing. Oh, you're pregnant? Oh, you're never going to sleep again. Oh, you're never going to have oh, you're never going to, whatever it was a terrible thing. There was never anything coming out of a good that was coming out of your brand new baby.
Oh, your child is growing up so fast. Enjoy the time while it lasts.
Yeah. And so they're going to find a negative spin on anything. Well, that was her mother. And so she's like, I don't want to deal with my mother anymore. She's here. I said, can I just teach you a couple of things? And I promise you, your mother won't do it to you anymore. She might do it to a lot of other people, but she's not going to do it to you. So I taught her the same thing I'm going to be teaching you guys. And what those things did was she would sit there, and when her mother would call her, instead of her picking up the phone and starting to speak to her mom, she would pre-frame and she would pick up the phone and say, hi, Mom, I've just got 10 minutes before I have to run out the door. What did you want to talk about? And she would start a clock for 10 minutes. And that meant her mom could only speak for 10 minutes. And that meant that her mom didn't go on and on and on about all these terrible, terrible scenarios and stories. She just kept it really short. So that worked really well. Then when she would call her mom and her mom would start reframing things poorly, she would use these techniques, and her mom decided that that wasn't fun anymore, because every time she wanted to complain or make things bad, her daughter would reframe them as positive or neutral, and she wasn't having any fun. So now when she talks to her mother never does it when she's around. She still does it, but just not to her daughter. Okay, that's a really, really important one. Okay, now another kind of scenario is that I was working with somebody who has high degrees of anxiety, and she wanted to give her boss some feedback. So her boss was a high micromanager, and she wanted to tell him that she didn't like being micromanaged. Has anybody ever given their boss bad feedback?
Yeah.
Yeah, Stacey has. Jolene, have you ever told your boss that you don't like something that they're doing?
No.
Okay, you're right. Jolene's like, I never do that.
I had one boss that is super micromanager, and back then I was in my younger days, in my 20s. I didn't have the courage. I just quit within like 2 months.
And this is what normally happens. Yep, people just quit. Yep. And so when we're giving negative feedback to somebody, her anxiety about giving the feedback of micromanaging to her boss was that he was going to get upset at her. And I said, that's one possibility. What's another possibility? So when we give feedback to somebody, so one possibility is they get upset. What else? Jolene, what else could happen?
Maybe they don't even know that they are doing that. So
Correct.
yeah.
Yep. And if they didn't know what they were doing it, what might be their response when you tell them?
A possible one is they can get defensive, or they acknowledge and they take it positively, like that is something that they can improve on.
They go, oh my God, I didn't realize I was doing that. Thank you so much. Right? Or they can get defensive. Oh, well, no, I don't really do that. That's not really me, blah, blah, blah. Right? They could do that as well. They could get really angry. What do you mean? How dare you? That's another possibility. Stacey, what's another possibility of them?
They might see how they can do things better.
Yep. They might take it as a challenge. They're like, oh, awesome, I could do that. What do you think I could change about that? Right? How would you like it different? They could ask questions for us, right? Another possibility is they go, oh, well, let me reflect on that. And they don't accept it and they don't deny it. They just go, okay, let me think about that. And it's neutral, right? That they just are in that nice neutral phase where they're not upset. They're not like, ooh, this is a really good challenge for me. And they're not positive about it, but they're just like, okay, let me reflect on that. Okay. Lots of different scenarios. The thing about that brings anxiety is we choose the only scenario that makes us feel like shit. And just remember, it's a choice. There are a bunch of other choices too. We could choose any of them, but we're choosing the one that makes us feel like shit. So please remember, it is a choice. You have a choice of how you think about that, what that's going to happen. And so what we want to do is just choose the one. And so I asked her, you don't have to choose the one that's positive. Choose the one that is neutral. So she chose the one that's neutral. And when she delivered that message to the guy that we created the message, we created that information to him, and then she had it written down, and she literally read it, like from the piece of paper. She just read it. She's like, no, this is going to help me say it in the way that I want to say it, blah, blah, blah. So she just read it literally as it was. And his reaction, are you ready? He says, oh, my wife says that all the time. Right? And so a scenario about what's possible that we never thought of. We never thought that his reaction was going to be, oh, my wife says that to me all the time. A, acknowledgement. B, understanding that it is a thing that he has and that other people in his life, very important people in his life, have already told him. Okay? And she was so relieved that A, he didn't have a negative reaction, but B, that she didn't build herself up to have that negative feeling that something negative was going to happen during that conversation, because it didn't. It never materialized. And he accepted it, and he doesn't do it anymore to her. He does it to everybody else. He doesn't do it to her. So she got him to change his behavior for her. And that's what we really want to have happen. Okay? All right. So that gives you kind of an idea about what I want you to do from a mental perspective. Now, I am going to give you some different scenarios that I'm going to have you play with as your homework assignment, so that you are going to play with them. And I know that, Stacy, you're going to have to leave pretty soon, right?
Maybe around 9:20.
9:20. Okay, fantastic. So what I'm going to do is we'll go over a couple of them, but I'm going to send you all 9 of them. And I'll send you the assignment. And I want you to just practice doing the stuff from the assignment. And then we'll interact, and then we'll talk about the results of that when we get to it in our next session. Okay. So the first one is the statement, I believe. All right. What I want you guys to understand is that when you're in a scenario where there is information coming in to your world, right? One person can believe information that they receive in a situation, and you can believe something else, and that's okay. So, for example, I think I told you about my husband and I have a very different understanding of what safety means when we are on a motorcycle ride. So for my husband, safety means that nobody has lost limbs and they all arrive and they're still breathing, right? Safety to me means I don't feel like I die on the way over there. And so when we're in a conversation and we're having a disagreement about that, he says, I believe safety is this. And I say, I believe safety is this other thing. It doesn't mean I'm saying he's wrong and I'm right. I'm saying my belief system is different than his. That's it. That's all I'm saying. So let me give you a different example of this, okay? I had a client that I worked with a long time ago, and he was about to work on a construction project where he was taking down a building in Hobart and in Tasmania, and it had some sort of historical value to it. And the question he did not want to have to deal with was the question about why they were going to tear down this building. And I said, okay, so they think you're tearing down, their belief system is you're tearing down a part of Hobart history, of Australian history. What do you believe instead? And he said, well, what I believe is we're creating a building that people can actually use rather than a relic that nobody can use. And I said, that's all you're going to say? And he's like, no, it can't be that simple. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's all you're going to say, right? So, for you believe that I'm tearing down this building and it's a part of Australian history. And for me, I believe that I'm creating a building that a lot of people can use instead of having a building that nobody uses. Right? I'm not saying, we never said that the person's wrong. We just said we have a different opinion. Okay? Yeah. So there was a scenario recently when I was talking to a client of mine, he had a friend of his that was a lifelong friend. They grew up with each other since they were like little children. They went all the way through school together. And there was a situation in New Zealand about transgender toilets. Okay. So do we have boy toilets and girl toilets? And what happens to transgender people? Do they use the boy toilet or the girl toilet? And so he had very strong beliefs. My client had very, very strong beliefs about the toilets, and that he believed that they should create transgender toilets for people who are transgender. So that he believed that all of the schools should have extra toilets for transgender people. And his mate said, that's ridiculous. Just use the toilets that are currently there. Right? And so one person believed one thing, the other person believed the other thing. Now, my client has such strong values about this thing that he decided he never wanted to be friends with his friend ever again. Okay? Now, just because the man has a different belief system. But it's important to understand that when we're doing this, all we're saying is, this is what you believe, this is what I believe. So in a scenario, Jolynn, you are doing some stuff with investing and things like that, okay? So if somebody said to you, oh, you and your investing stuff, it's taking too much time away from your children, how would you respond using this thing?
Oh, then I'll say something like, I believe this is not true because I'll spend more time. I'll spend quality time with them during the weekends.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So what's important is we don't say to them, you're wrong. Okay.
Mm.
What we're going to do is say something to the effect of, oh, so for you, you believe that me doing the investments is taking away from my children and the time I have with my children. And for me, what I feel is that I have all of the time that I'm spending with my children on the weekend because they're normally doing schoolwork at 8:00 at night when I'm doing investing. Right? And so that's all we're going to say. You believe this, and I believe this other thing. Cool? So we don't have to say, I disagree with you. We never have to say it. Okay? Stacy, what about a situation in your thing where if somebody comes in and says to you, oh, I see that you're hopping jobs all the time. So their belief is that you're hopping jobs. What would you say as a response?
Like, well, when you're young, you got to hop to know what you like.
Okay, so for you think I'm hopping jobs, and for me, I think I'm finding out what I like about different work scenarios. Right? So that is, you believe this, I believe this. So what I find is it's really important when we do these kinds of things to reframe people's situations is to actually say, for you, this is your belief, and this is what I believe. Okay, because when we tell them and we say what their belief is, we're acknowledging it and we're not discounting it. We're not saying it's wrong. We acknowledge it and then we say, and here's what I believe. Okay, here's another one. Okay, so same scenario, Jolynn. If I said to you, when you do your investments at 8:00 at night, you're taking away time from your children. What do you think my aim is in saying that to you? What do you think the purpose of why I'm saying it to you?
So I must use that that starting phrase, is it?
No. Just tell before you use the phrase itself. What would cause somebody to say it, right?
One possible is they want to make me feel guilty.
Right.
Second thing is that's not what they do. They themselves actually will spend the evening time with their children.
Yeah, but what would be the reason that they wouldn't want you spending time on the investments and instead spend time with your children? What would be the reason that they would want that?
They feel that it is important to spend time with the children.
Yep. So I guess your aim in saying that is because to you it's really important to spend all your time with your children.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So now if you listen, I haven't said yes or no. I haven't argued. I haven't given my side of the story. I haven't done anything. All I said was, oh, I guess your aim in saying that is that you think it's really important to spend all your time with children. Okay. That's it. That's it. We haven't tried to say anything else other than here is the aim of what you're saying, right? And if they say to me, well, you don't have to spend all of your time with your children. Oh, well, this is time for me, right? So if I wanted to go back, I could then say, oh, I believe that I don't have to spend all of my time with my children, that I can have some time for myself, right? So we can combine them. But I guess your aim is, so in Stacy's scenario, Stacy, what would be some reason why somebody would say to you, I see that you're hopping jobs all the time. What is the aim of them saying that? Why would somebody say that? What would be their purpose of saying that to you?
They want me to find something stable.
Right. So I guess your aim is for me to find a stable job. There you go. And we're done. We don't have to go any further than that. And they go, oh yeah, because stability is this and blah, 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 blah. And then we can go, oh, for you, stability is really important. And for me, what's more important is for me to find, which is our next one. To me, what's more important is, okay, so in Jolene's scenario was that, you should be spending time at night with your kids rather than being on investments. And Jolene says, what's more important to you, Jolene?
To learn a skill to earn money.
Right. So to me, what's more important is that I learn a skill that I can earn money for my family's future. Right? Super simple. And for Stacy, so you're job hopping all the time. And for Stacy, what's more important is
I need to find what I like.
Yep. To me, what's more important isn't job hopping, it's finding the job that I really like, that I can be stable with. Does everybody get the game?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to be giving you a bunch of different scenarios about that. So the first scenario I'm going to be giving you is, here's a word. What's a bad word that goes with it? What's a good word that goes with it? What's a neutral word that goes with it? It'll make more sense when you actually get the piece of paper. So that's one example. And then the second example is there's going to be 9 little different scenarios, and you're going to have, here's the scenario, this is what's going to happen, and then you're going to reframe it 9 different ways. Okay, so I will send you all of the information with all the instructions and the 2 little different exercises. The important thing is that we want to get them done so that by the time we meet next time, then we can go over them and kind of get a scenario that you guys are comfortable, and which ones do you feel most comfortable using? Okay.
Actually, right, can I ask something?
Yes.
So like I've been having a lot of, because I'm in HR, and every day at work I'm reading policies about no secondary employment, and it's very clear the definition of secondary employment. So I just want to reframe my worst case scenario in my head, which is, oh, they will find out and they will fire me.
Well, they're going to find out that what?
I'm still having my insurance license.
Right. So in all that documentation that you read, did it say that you can't have a license to do another job, or did it say that you can't do another job?
I can't do another job.
Right.
Not
Right. So
even self-employed.
having the license to do another job doesn't count.
Hmm?
So, for example, have you sold any insurance to anybody, and since you took this job?
Nope.
There you go. By definition, you have not done anything about your other job, right?
But I'm still income.
Right, but holding a license. So let me ask you a question. So Jolene does investing, right? And that would technically be a side hustle, right? And you would
Yes.
earn money from it.
Yep.
Yep. And so I'm guessing they can't. If you earn money from an investment, right? So it was something that you had done in the past, but way before they came along, and you're still getting credit for that because it's like an investment. It keeps depositing that, but you have technically not sold any insurance. You haven't done anything during that time, right?
Nope.
And so that's important to understand, is there's a very legal definition between those two things.
It does say that I need to declare any membership or association.
Membership or
Like
association of what?
It does say that I need to declare if I have a membership or association with something.
Right. So do you have a membership of something? Because I don't believe that you have to be a member of anything to be a insurance salesperson.
I mean, I'm a consultant. I'm a financial consultant. So
right, but you're you're legally you have a license to do that. But you haven't done it.
Yeah, I have correct.
Right. So there you go. So as long as from the moment you started until the moment you get you decide to let that thing expire or go or whatever it is, as long as you are not actively involved in it, then you're legally safe.
Okay.
Okay. Just remember though, as soon as you do get actively involved in it, and there is no reframing possible, you're outside that potential. You are now actively involved in it, so therefore you are technically against their contract. Okay. Yes.
In my industry, IT, we also have a lot of this kind of so-called membership or association because we have so many different kind of skill set in the IT industry. So, I guess while we slightly different context, but usually once we pass, we wouldn't want to let it lapse and then we have to retake the exam again. So usually we will let it continue, but we may not be doing those things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the thing about it is there's a difference between having a license to do something and actually being actively involved in it. So you can like a medical license or things like that. Just because you own a medical license and you have a medical license does not mean you're practicing medicine.
Yeah,
those are two different things.
I guess it's like I'm just a prudential financial consultant, but I'm not actually selling prudential plans now.
Correct. And as long as you do not do that, you're safe. So park it and don't do it until you get to the point in time where deciding that this is the right company. You will pass your thing because you are acting as if you're going to pass your probationary period. So
but I do have clients like asking me, how do I claim this, how do I claim that? So I'm still helping them.
But you're helping them as far as claims go.
Claims, whatever. But I'm not selling. It's just like claims.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So before you actually took this job, you had sold a policy to someone, and by the right of you selling the policy, you must help them to finish that policy that they've already paid you for, correct?
Yep.
Yep. So there you go. So as long as it doesn't, as long as you don't get a new person on, you should be good to go. Now, Stacey, I know you have to run, so I'll send you the email, and good luck with your finger.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So Jolene, I'll send you the email as well. And do you have any questions about reframing or anything like that?
I remember the previous, not exactly question, it's more on previously when I shared the scenario of the quarrel with my brother, you
Yes.
mentioned that this is something that I can use.
Yeah. So there's going to be some scenarios that we're going to come up. And then in the second part, I'm also going to teach you the second time we meet, I'm going to be teaching you a very specific phrase that we're going to deal or use when people have done something that has crossed a boundary of ours. Okay.
Okay.
So that's going to be in the second half, but this half gets us going on the reframing. And so when that person might say something to us, this is an ability for us to go, no, I'm going to sit in my bubble. And you can say all sorts of nasty things to me, but it's going to bounce off my bubble. And I'm going to, okay, you believe this, I'm going to believe something completely different. Or for you, that's important. For me, something very different is important.
So,
cool.
Jolene, what you can also do is, so after you're done with the exercise that Lily give you, if you want to apply it into your own situation, with your brother's case, you can always write it down and then use frames that she has given you, and then you just practice on that on your situation.
There is an example of that. You have to come up with your own example and then use all the frames.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Again. Bye.